The Arcturians confirm that a critical acceleration window is already active.
The Arcturians confirm that this window does not open for everyone.
The Arcturians move closer only when coherence reaches a critical threshold. The Arcturians are not announcing the future. They are confirming what has already begun.
The Arcturians observe that many are entering an acceleration phase without realizing it.
The Arcturians recognize when a timeline becomes ready for acceleration.
The Arcturians are not announcing a future event. They are confirming a condition that is already active. A critical acceleration window has opened, not symbolically, not metaphorically, but structurally. And many have already entered it without realizing what changed. If this message reached you now, it is not coincidence. It means your field is already interacting with this window. This is not a warning. This is not a prophecy. And this is not a message about something that might happen. This is about what is happening now. An acceleration phase is underway, a period where timelines compress, perception sharpens, and reality begins responding faster to coherence than to effort. Inside this window, things do not unfold the way they used to. Movement feels lighter, but consequences arrive faster. Decisions carry more weight even when they seem small. Delays stop working the way they once did. Some people experience this as sudden clarity. Others experience it as pressure, restlessness, or a sense that something invisible is pushing them forward. Both reactions come from the same source: acceleration. The Arcturians move closer only during moments like this. Not to interfere, not to rescue, not to persuade, but to stabilize coherence when a system begins shifting too quickly for the old identity to hold. They do not approach chaos. They approach alignment. They do not respond to emotion. They respond to readability. And during acceleration windows, readability increases dramatically. This is why many are entering this phase at the same time. Not because something external changed, but because enough inner resistance collapsed simultaneously. When that happens, timelines loosen. Perception widens. The future begins pressing gently into the present. You may have felt it already. A sense that time is moving differently. That intuition interrupts thought instead of following it. That old patterns no longer hold your attention. That certain choices suddenly feel impossible, while others feel inevitable. This is not instability. This is not confusion. This is not loss of control. This is what happens when acceleration begins before the mind is fully aware of it. The window you are inside does not stay open indefinitely. It exists only while coherence is maintained. Once it closes, timelines solidify quickly, and movement becomes heavier again. This is why the next phase matters. Not everyone who enters an acceleration window remains inside it. Some rush. Some overinterpret. Some try to force the next step. And in doing so, they collapse the very coherence that opened the window in the first place. This transmission exists for one reason: to explain what this acceleration window truly is. Why so many are entering it now. And what must be done, quietly, precisely, without urgency, to remain aligned as it unfolds. Now stay present. Slow your breath. Let your awareness settle behind your thoughts. Because what comes next is not about awakening more. It is about learning how to move correctly inside acceleration. Chapter 1. What this acceleration window really is. An acceleration window is not an event you witness. It is a condition you enter. This is the first thing that must be understood. Nothing external announces it. Nothing dramatic marks its arrival. There are no signs in the sky, no sudden miracles, no visible rupture. Acceleration begins internally, when resistance drops below a critical threshold. Most humans believe change comes from effort, from desire, from repetition, from forcing outcomes into existence. Acceleration windows form for the opposite reason. They open when effort becomes unnecessary. To the Arcturians, acceleration has nothing to do with speed. It has everything to do with coherence density. When your emotional field, mental focus, and intuitive awareness stop pulling against one another, your frequency compresses into a single readable signal. That compression is the window. This is why acceleration feels strange at first. You don't feel euphoric. You don't feel dramatic. You don't feel overwhelmed. You feel clear. Clear without explanation. Clear without urgency. Clear without the need to convince yourself or anyone else. This clarity is not excitement. It is alignment. And alignment changes how reality responds. Before the window opens, life responds to effort. After it opens, life responds to posture. This is the moment where old rules stop working. Trying harder stops producing results. Waiting longer stops creating safety. Overthinking begins to generate friction instead of clarity. Inside an acceleration window, the system no longer rewards intensity. It rewards precision. This is why the window is critical. Because the same actions that once felt productive can suddenly feel heavy. The same habits that once soothed you can suddenly feel empty. The same distractions that once worked can stop numbing you at all. Nothing is wrong. The system is recalibrating around coherence. Most people misunderstand this phase. They think acceleration means things should happen faster now. They expect immediate breakthroughs, constant signs, dramatic confirmation. But acceleration windows do not respond to expectation. They respond to consistency. Consistency between what you sense and how you act. Consistency between what you know and what you tolerate. Consistency between awareness and behavior. This is the metric the Arcturians observe. They do not measure belief. They do not measure knowledge. They do not measure how spiritual someone sounds. They measure whether a human can hold coherence without collapsing into urgency. Because urgency is noise. And noise collapses the window. This is where many lose it. They feel the opening and rush to fill it. They sense clarity and try to act immediately. They mistake movement for progress. But acceleration does not ask you to move faster. It asks you to move cleaner. Inside the window, every action carries more weight. Every decision echoes faster. Every misalignment becomes noticeable immediately. This is why some experience this phase as pressure. Not because something bad is happening, but because incoherence is no longer buffered. Old coping strategies stop working. Avoidance becomes uncomfortable. Delays feel heavy instead of neutral. The window exposes how you hold yourself. Not your thoughts. Not your intentions. Your posture. Posture is how you respond when nothing forces you to act. Posture is how you choose when urgency is no longer required. This is the silent test of acceleration. The window does not ask, "What do you want?" It asks, "Can you remain coherent while nothing is pushing you?" If the answer is yes, movement continues effortlessly. If the answer is no, the window contracts. This is not punishment. This is physics. Acceleration windows only remain open while coherence is stable. And this is why this chapter matters. Because before you can understand the signs, before you can understand the effects, before you can understand what to do next, you must understand this truth. Acceleration does not reward action. It rewards alignment without urgency. Everything that follows, the tests, the strange timing, the heightened intuition, the sense of being guided, emerges from this single condition. Alignment reached a density that made movement possible. Now the system is watching how you hold that alignment. And this is where the next stage begins. Activation, acceleration stabilization command. This activation is not designed to create sensation. It is designed to stabilize posture inside the window. Type this exactly. I choose coherence over urgency. As you write it, do not search for a feeling. Simply notice the subtle shift. A quiet settling behind the eyes. A soft drop in internal pressure. A sense of space opening between thought and reaction. This is not excitement. This is stabilization. This is the posture acceleration responds to. And from this point forward, the window will begin reacting not to what you want, but to how steadily you can remain aligned inside it. Chapter 2. The first tests inside the acceleration window. The moment an acceleration window opens, it begins to test coherence. Not aggressively, not dramatically, but precisely. These tests are not obstacles. They are measurements. They are designed to reveal whether alignment is stable or merely situational. This is where many people misunderstand what is happening. They expect signs. They expect rewards. They expect confirmation. Instead, the window applies pressure without force. The first tests do not arrive as problems. They arrive as subtle invitations to lose posture. Test 1. False urgency. The earliest test is urgency that has no real cause. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is missing. Nothing is collapsing. Yet the nervous system suddenly feels the impulse to act, decide, message, explain, move, fix. This is not intuition. This is residual conditioning. Acceleration removes delay buffers, so old urgency patterns surface clearly. The test is simple. Can you remain still when nothing is actually demanding movement? Those who react immediately collapse coherence. Those who pause strengthen it. Acceleration does not respond to speed. It responds to discernment. Test 2. The return of old patterns. Shortly after entering the window, fragments of old habits return. Old emotional triggers. Old distractions. Old coping mechanisms. Old thoughts that once had power. This is not regression. It is exposure. The system is revealing what no longer fits the new frequency. The test here is subtle. Will you re-identify with what is familiar, or allow it to pass without engagement? Acceleration windows close when identity clings backward. They stabilize when identity releases quietly. Test 3. Social misalignment. Another early test appears through people. Conversations feel off. Interactions feel heavier. Certain dynamics suddenly feel draining. Not because others changed, but because your coherence did. The test is not to judge. The test is not to isolate. The test is posture. Can you remain neutral without shrinking? Can you remain present without explaining yourself? Can you allow distance without guilt? Acceleration punishes justification. It rewards silent boundary coherence. Test 4. Overinterpretation. As sensitivity increases, many begin interpreting everything as a sign. Every thought feels symbolic. Every coincidence feels loaded. Every sensation feels meaningful. This is a trap. Acceleration windows amplify perception, but clarity requires restraint. The test here is, can you perceive without assigning meaning? Those who overinterpret fragment their signal. Those who observe without narrative stabilize it. The Arcturians do not communicate through symbols first. They communicate through field response. Test 5. The temptation to force the next step. Perhaps the most dangerous test is impatience disguised as readiness. You feel aligned. You feel clear. You feel capable. And the mind whispers, act now. Acceleration does not require immediate action. It requires correct timing. The test is whether you trust alignment enough to wait for the system to move first. Those who force collapse momentum. Those who allow maintain flow. Test 6. Emotional waves without story. As coherence stabilizes, emotions surface faster, but without narrative. Sadness without reason. Relief without cause. Tension that dissolves quickly. This is purification, not instability. The test is simple. Can you feel without explaining? Emotion processed without story strengthens the window. Emotion explained prematurely recreates resistance. Test 7. Silence as a response. The final early test is silence itself. Moments where nothing happens. No insight. No sign. No movement. This silence is not absence. It is calibration. The test is whether you can remain present without stimulation. Acceleration windows remain open only for those who can rest inside stillness. Those who chase stimulation generate noise. Noise collapses coherence. All these tests share one purpose. They are not asking what you know. They are asking how you hold yourself. Acceleration does not test belief. It tests stability under neutrality. And if you pass these early tests quietly, without urgency, without narrative, without forcing meaning, the window does not close. It deepens. This is when acceleration stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like guidance. Activation, coherence under pressure command. This activation stabilizes your posture during the first test. Type this exactly. I remain coherent when nothing pushes me. As you write it, notice a slowing in the breath, a quiet strength in the chest, a sense of grounded neutrality, the absence of urgency without loss of clarity. This is the state acceleration responds to. This is how the window stays open. And this is where the next phase begins. Chapter 3. How acceleration begins guiding instead of testing. There is a precise moment when acceleration changes its behavior. Until now, the window has been observing how you respond, how you hold yourself under neutrality, how you move when nothing pushes you. Once coherence proves stable, the nature of acceleration shifts. It stops testing, and it begins guiding. This transition is subtle but unmistakable. Nothing external announces it. There is no dramatic signal. No confirmation arrives in words. What changes is how reality meets you. The shift from pressure to direction. When acceleration is testing, life applies pressure without instruction. Situations arise without clarity. Choices feel ambiguous. Silence feels heavy. When acceleration begins guiding, pressure dissolves, and direction appears. Not as commands, not as voices, but as a quiet sense of right movement. You no longer ask, "What should I do?" You simply know what not to do. This is the first sign guidance has begun. Clarity through elimination. Paths that once felt possible lose energy. Options that once seemed attractive feel hollow. Certain conversations feel unnecessary. Certain actions feel impossible to force. Guidance begins by closing doors without drama. Guidance does not push, it pulls. Acceleration guidance never rushes you. It creates a subtle gravitational pull toward coherence. You feel drawn toward simpler choices, quieter environments, fewer explanations, more precise action. You stop multitasking internally. You stop rehearsing outcomes. You stop negotiating with misalignment. Not because you decided to, but because resistance feels heavier than stillness. This is how acceleration guides. It makes coherence feel lighter than effort. The internal compass activates. At this stage, intuition stops interrupting thought and becomes the default orientation. You begin sensing direction before reasoning appears. You feel when to speak and when silence is correct. You feel when to move and when waiting preserves momentum. You feel when something is complete even without closure. This is not foresight. This is field responsiveness. Acceleration guidance sharpens your internal compass so external confirmation becomes unnecessary. This is why the need to explain yourself fades. Guidance does not require witnesses. Synchronicity changes function. Earlier, synchronicities felt like signs. Now they function as alignment feedback. They do not excite you. They orient you. A conversation appears exactly when clarity is needed. A delay prevents misaligned action. A path closes before effort is wasted. Nothing feels random, but nothing feels dramatic. Synchronicity becomes efficient. This is a sign acceleration is no longer testing. It is cooperating. Emotional response refines. During testing, emotions surfaced rapidly to clear density. During guidance, emotions become quieter and more precise. You no longer ride emotional waves. You receive emotional signals. Discomfort signals misalignment. Ease signals coherence. Neutrality signals correct timing. There is less intensity and more accuracy. This is emotional intelligence recalibrated for guidance. Decisions become clean. One of the clearest markers of guidance is decision quality. Decisions feel final without drama, calm without doubt, firm without rigidity. You stop revisiting choices internally, not because you are certain of outcomes, but because the field confirms posture. Acceleration no longer asks, "Will you react?" It asks, "Can you follow?" Guidance requires less effort than testing. This is the paradox. As acceleration deepens, life becomes quieter, not louder. You do less, but what you do lands cleanly. You speak less, but what you say carries weight. You plan less, but what unfolds feels inevitable. This is guidance, not control, not prediction, participation. Why this phase feels strange to the mind? The mind was trained during effort-based reality. It expects struggle to precede movement. So when guidance appears without resistance, the mind grows suspicious. Shouldn't this be harder? Am I missing something? No. This is how aligned acceleration feels. Ease is not a sign of avoidance. It is a sign of correct interaction. The role of the Arcturians in this phase. The Arcturians do not instruct behavior. They stabilize the field where guidance becomes obvious. They amplify coherence so intuition becomes reliable. They reduce noise so perception sharpens. They support alignment so action remains clean. They do not lead you. They make misalignment uncomfortable enough. That guidance becomes the only sustainable option. This is how non-interference works. This is where trust replaces effort. Acceleration guidance asks one thing. Trust the posture that got you here. Not belief, not faith, posture. As long as coherence remains stable, guidance continues. When urgency returns, testing resumes. This is not punishment. This is calibration. Activation. Guidance receptivity command. This activation aligns your awareness with the guidance phase. Type this exactly. I allow acceleration to guide my movement. As you write it, notice a quiet confidence settling in the body. Less pressure to decide. More certainty about what to release. A sense of being oriented without force. This is guidance. This is participation. And from this point forward, acceleration will respond less to how you react, and more to how accurately you follow. Chapter 4. When guidance restructures your timeline. There is a moment when guidance stops influencing your inner state and begins reorganizing your external reality. This is where acceleration becomes visible. Not dramatic, not chaotic, but unmistakable. When guidance stabilizes, your timeline can no longer remain fragmented. It must reorganize to match your coherence. This is not destiny changing. This is misaligned timelines releasing their grip. Timelines do not collapse randomly. From the human perspective, it may feel sudden. Plans fall apart without conflict. Relationships drift without explanation. Opportunities disappear without resistance. Paths that once felt open quietly close. But this is not loss. This is subtraction. Guidance does not add complexity. It removes interference. Acceleration restructures timelines by removing what no longer resonates, not by forcing something new into place. This is why the process feels quiet. Nothing is being taken from you. You are being released from timelines you already outgrew. The difference between endings and extractions. Endings feel emotional. Extractions feel clean. When guidance restructures your timeline, situations do not explode. They simply lose energy. You stop wanting to fix. You stop needing closure. You stop replaying conversations. Things end because the field no longer feeds them. This is the signature of guided acceleration. If something leaves without drama, it was already complete. New timelines do not arrive fully formed. As old structures dissolve, new timelines do not immediately replace them. This gap confuses many. Humans expect replacement. Acceleration creates space first. Space is not emptiness. Space is bandwidth. This is the phase where silence increases. Schedules loosen. Identity feels undefined. This is not uncertainty. This is timeline plasticity. Your reality becomes flexible so the correct configuration can emerge. Why this phase feels disorienting to the mind. The mind was trained to identify itself through continuity. When continuity breaks, the mind searches for explanation. But guidance does not explain. It repositions. This is why you may feel detached from old goals, unmotivated by former rewards, uninterested in past narratives, calm without direction. This is not stagnation. This is recalibration. The timeline is loosening so a more accurate sequence can form. When future self begins merging, one of the most powerful effects of guided acceleration is the subtle emergence of your future self. Not visually, not imaginatively, energetically. You begin responding with maturity you didn't rehearse. You speak with certainty you didn't plan. You decline paths you would have chased before. This is not confidence. This is timeline convergence. The future version of you, already stable at this frequency, begins informing present decisions. This is why hesitation decreases. You are no longer choosing blindly. Synchronicity becomes structural. Earlier, synchronicities felt exciting. Now they become functional. Events align to reduce friction. Meetings occur at exact timing. Obstacles prevent misaligned movement. Opportunities appear without effort. Nothing feels magical. Everything feels efficient. This is the hallmark of timeline restructuring. Reality stops negotiating. It starts cooperating. Why some things speed up and others stop completely? During restructuring, timelines do not move uniformly. Some areas accelerate dramatically. Others freeze. This is intentional. Acceleration applies momentum where coherence exists, and removes motion where distortion remains. If something slows down unexpectedly, it is being reevaluated. If something speeds up, it has already been approved. This is why forcing stalled areas creates friction. Guidance reorganizes in layers. The role of non-action in timeline restructuring. One of the most misunderstood aspects of this phase is the importance of not acting. Action taken too early locks timelines prematurely. Guidance often asks for restraint before movement. Waiting is not delay. Waiting is precision timing. Those who trust this phase emerge with clean trajectories. Those who rush recreate fragmentation. Acceleration rewards patience when patience is aligned. This is where identity stops leading. When guidance restructures your timeline, identity steps aside. You stop asking, "Who am I becoming?" and start living from who you already are. The need to define yourself fades. The need to announce progress dissolves. Movement becomes natural. This is when the timeline begins responding before effort is applied. Activation, timeline restructuring stabilization command. This activation aligns your field with timeline reorganization. Type this exactly. I allow guidance to reorganize my timeline. As you write it, notice a sense of space opening around your plans. A release of pressure to define outcomes. A calm acceptance of what is ending. A subtle trust in what has not appeared yet. This is cooperation. This is alignment. This is how timelines restructure without resistance. And from this point forward, reality will continue adjusting. Not to who you were, but to the coherence you now hold. Chapter 5. The point where the window becomes irreversible. There is a point inside every acceleration window where return is no longer possible. Not because something external blocks you, but because coherence reaches a density that cannot collapse back into fragmentation. This is the moment the window becomes irreversible. Nothing dramatic marks it. No sign appears. No announcement is made. Yet everything changes. Irreversibility is not a choice. It is a threshold. Humans think irreversibility comes from decision. The Arcturians know it comes from frequency stabilization. You do not decide to cross this point. You arrive at it. It occurs when coherence has been held long enough that the system reorganizes permanently around it. At this stage, alignment is no longer an effort. It becomes the default state. And once coherence becomes default, the old timeline cannot be re-entered. Not because it is forbidden, but because it no longer matches you. The moment resistance stops working. One of the clearest markers of irreversibility is the sudden failure of resistance. You may try to return to old habits, old reactions, old distractions, old identities, but they no longer provide relief. Not because you are disciplined, but because they feel energetically incompatible. This is not willpower. This is frequency mismatch. The system no longer feeds what no longer fits. Why the mind panics here? At the edge of irreversibility, the mind often reacts, not with fear, but with nostalgia. It remembers versions of you that felt simpler, less responsible, less precise. The mind searches for the familiar, but familiarity is no longer safety. This is the last attempt of the old identity to reassert continuity. If you do not cling to it, the transition completes silently. Irreversibility feels quiet, not grand. This surprises many. People expect irreversibility to feel powerful, victorious, elevated. Instead, it feels normal, calm, stable, clear. You wake up one day and realize you are no longer negotiating with yourself. You are no longer rehearsing decisions. You are no longer seeking confirmation. You simply move, or don't, without inner conflict. This is irreversibility. The old timeline no longer responds. Another unmistakable sign. The old timeline stops reacting to you. Attempts to revive old dynamics fall flat. Old conversations no longer trigger emotion. Old environments feel distant, not painful, just irrelevant. The timeline is not rejecting you. It is complete. You have exited its feedback loop. When guidance becomes continuous, before irreversibility, guidance appears in moments. After irreversibility, guidance becomes ambient. You are not being guided occasionally. You are oriented constantly. Intuition no longer interrupts thought. Thought aligns around intuition. You no longer ask what is right. You feel when something is off. This is not heightened sensitivity. This is permanent orientation. Why this stage feels lonely to some. Irreversibility can feel isolating, briefly. Not because you are alone, but because fewer people can meet you at this frequency. Small talk feels hollow. Explanation feels unnecessary. Validation feels irrelevant. This is not superiority. This is divergence. You are no longer living from the same reference point, and that gap must be honored, not forced closed. The window does not close, it locks. This is the final truth of acceleration windows. They do not close suddenly. They lock. When irreversibility occurs, the window becomes structure. Acceleration is no longer something you are inside. It becomes how your life unfolds. From this point forward, coherence sustains itself. Misalignment creates immediate feedback. Reality responds faster than thought. Identity stabilizes without effort. This is not awakening. This is integration. Why this point is rare. Few reach irreversibility because few are willing to let go of internal negotiation. Most want clarity without consequence. Movement without responsibility. Acceleration without commitment. But irreversibility requires one thing. You stop trying to return. Not because you decided to, but because there is nothing there anymore. This is where the Arcturians step back. Paradoxically, this is also where Arcturian proximity feels quieter. Not because they leave, but because their stabilizing function is complete. You no longer need external coherence support. You are the stable field. This is success from their perspective. Activation, irreversibility anchor command. This activation is not symbolic. It anchors recognition of the threshold. Type this exactly. I remain aligned beyond the point of return. As you write it, notice, no surge, no intensity, just a deep internal settling, a sense of finality without fear, clarity without urgency, stability without effort. This is the lock. This is the moment the window stops being temporary. And from here forward, reality will no longer ask whether you are ready. It will respond as if you already are. Final transmission, living beyond the acceleration window. If you are here now, then the acceleration window has already done its work. Not by changing who you are, but by removing what you are no longer able to inhabit. Living beyond the acceleration window does not feel like ascension. It feels like stability. There is no longer a sense of moving towards something. No longer a need to get there. No longer a question about what comes next. Life begins responding as if alignment is assumed. This is the quiet truth of acceleration. It was never meant to carry you forward forever. It existed to reposition you, and then dissolve. What remains after the window? What remains is not intensity. What remains is not mystery. What remains is not searching. What remains is orientation. You wake up inside your life already aligned. Decisions arise cleanly. Misalignment is felt instantly. Correction happens without struggle. You no longer wait for signs. You are the reference point.
As this critical acceleration window pulses around you, feel the Arcturian's frequency locking into your field. You're not just at the edge, you're crossing it. Old timelines dissolve. New realities solidify. Don't step back. Anchor now. Breathe deep. Claim, I am coherence. I am the shift. Synchronicities will surge. Density will lift. Your highest purpose activates. The universe bends to your signal. You've been prepared for this. Step through. Your accelerated self awaits. Subscribe for more transmissions.